This is gonna blow your mind. China is hoarding grain, iron and copper ore, oil and cobalt at an unprecedented rate. There is a growing unease, a palpable tension that can be felt in boardrooms and living rooms alike. The reason? China is stockpiling essential resources at an unprecedented rate. Grain, oil, metals, the building blocks of a modern economy are disappearing into Chinese warehouses, creating a ripple of concern across the globe. This aggressive accumulation raises a critical question. Is China preparing for war or simply hedging against future crises? The ambiguity is unsettling. The answer has profound implications for global stability and the balance of power. The stakes have never been higher. The world has seen this before, and history has a way of repeating itself. In the years leading up to World War II, resource-poor nations like Germany and Japan embarked on aggressive stockpiling campaigns, setting the stage for global conflict. They were preparing for conflict, and the world paid a heavy price. Is China following the same playbook? The parallels are unsettling, and the world watches with a mix of fear and fascination. China's economic rise has been remarkable, but it has also been fueled by an insatiable appetite for raw materials, driving its relentless pursuit of resources. This dependence on external sources of supply makes China vulnerable to disruptions, a fact that has not gone unnoticed by its leaders. A disruption in the flow of these materials could cripple its economy and undermine its ambitions, leading to a cascade of economic and political consequences. The Chinese Communist Party is acutely aware of this vulnerability and is taking steps to mitigate it. Stockpiling resources is a way to mitigate risk, a strategic move to ensure stability in uncertain times. It is a strategic hedge against an uncertain future, a calculated gamble to safeguard the nation's interests. But the sheer scale of China's stockpiling has raised eyebrows and sparked debates among experts and policymakers. The country is accumulating resources far beyond what would be considered prudent for normal economic activity, leading to speculation about its true intentions. This has led some analysts to conclude that China is preparing for something far more ominous, a scenario that could reshape the global order, something that would require vast quantities of raw materials, war. The world holds its breath, hoping for peace, but preparing for the worst. The dragons hoard resources, vanishing into the east. The story of China's insatiable appetite for resources is one of both awe and concern. China's shopping list is long and varied, encompassing a wide array of essential commodities and materials. At the top is grain, a staple that is crucial for the sustenance of its massive population. China has always valued food security, understanding the importance of a stable food supply. It has a long and tumultuous history of famine, which has left an indelible mark on its collective memory. But recent stockpiling efforts go well beyond typical reserves, indicating a strategic move to safeguard against future uncertainties. China is now estimated to hold over half of the world's wheat and rice reserves, a staggering amount that underscores its commitment to food security. This is a staggering amount, reflecting a level of preparedness that few other nations can match.
Then there's oil, another critical resource that fuels the engine of China's economic growth. China is the world's largest importer of crude oil, a title that speaks volumes about its energy needs. It needs this oil to fuel its factories, power its vehicles, and sustain its economic growth, which shows no signs of slowing down. But China is also surrounded by maritime choke points, narrow passages that are crucial for its oil imports. These are vulnerable to blockade in a conflict, posing a significant risk to its energy security. So, China is building up its strategic petroleum reserves at an unprecedented rate, ensuring it has a buffer against potential disruptions.
Beyond food and fuel, China is also stockpiling key industrial metals essential for its manufacturing and technological sectors. Copper, essential for electrical wiring and plumbing, is being vacuumed up by Chinese buyers, driving up global demand. Cobalt, a key component in lithium-ion batteries, is another target, crucial for the burgeoning electric vehicle market. And then there's iron ore, the lifeblood of China's steel industry, which is the backbone of its infrastructure development. China's demand for these metals is pushing prices higher, creating shortages in other parts of the world and affecting global supply chains. This aggressive acquisition strategy is not limited to raw materials, but extends to finished goods as well. China is also stockpiling finished goods, from medical supplies to semiconductors, ensuring it has a ready supply of critical components in case of disruption. From medical supplies to semiconductors, China is ensuring that it has a ready supply of critical components in case of disruption, a move that highlights its forward-thinking approach. This comprehensive approach to stockpiling points to a deliberate and strategic effort by the Chinese Communist Party to prepare for a range of potential scenarios, from pandemics to war, ensuring that the nation remains resilient in the face of global uncertainties. Whispers of war. Is conflict on the horizon? The possibility of a war involving China is a sobering thought. The world watches with bated breath as tensions escalate in the region. The most likely flashpoint is Taiwan, a small island with a big role in global geopolitics. China views Taiwan as a breakaway province, the legacy of the Chinese Civil War. This historical context fuels the current tensions. The Chinese Communist Party has vowed to reunify Taiwan with the mainland by force if necessary. This promise is not just rhetoric, it is a deeply ingrained policy. Recent military exercises and bellicose rhetoric from Beijing have heightened tensions. The saber rattling is more than just a show of strength. It is a clear message to the world.
A war over Taiwan would be catastrophic. The scale of destruction would be unprecedented in modern times. It would draw in the United States, Japan, and other regional powers. The alliances and treaties in place would almost guarantee a broader conflict. The economic fallout would be global. Markets would crash, supply chains would be disrupted, and the world economy could plunge into a deep recession. And the human cost would be immeasurable. Lives lost, families torn apart, and a humanitarian crisis of epic proportions. But the Chinese Communist Party may have calculated that the risks of conflict are outweighed by the potential rewards of reunifying Taiwan. This strategic calculus is driven by both national pride and geopolitical ambition. China's stockpiling of resources could be seen as a preparation for this eventuality. The accumulation of essential supplies is a clear indicator of long-term planning.
A war with Taiwan would be a resource-intensive undertaking. The logistics of such a conflict would be staggering. China would need to mobilize its vast military, maintain supply lines across the Taiwan Strait, and weather potential sanctions. The complexity of these operations cannot be overstated. Having ample stockpiles of food, fuel, and raw materials would be crucial to sustaining a prolonged conflict. These resources would be the lifeblood of the war effort.
Moreover, China's stockpiling could be part of a broader strategy of economic coercion. By controlling these vital resources, China gains significant leverage. By controlling access to vital resources, China could pressure Taiwan or its allies into making concessions. This tactic has been effective in the past. This is a tactic that China has used before, most notably in disputes with Japan and the Philippines over territorial claims in the South China Sea. The pattern is clear, and the stakes are high.
Section 4. Beyond the battlefield, economic security and crisis resilience. While the specter of war looms large, it is not the only reason for China's stockpiling behavior.
The CCP is also acutely aware of the country's economic vulnerabilities. China's decades-long economic miracle has been built on a foundation of cheap labor, foreign investment, and access to global markets. This model is now under strain. Wages in China are rising. The global economy is becoming increasingly uncertain, and geopolitical tensions are threatening to disrupt trade and supply chains.
In this environment, the CCP is seeking to enhance China's resilience. Stockpiling resources is a way to insulate the country from external shocks. Take food security, for example. China's population is vast and its arable land is limited. Climate change is already impacting crop yields. By building up its grain reserves, China is ensuring that it can feed its people even in the event of a global food crisis.
This is not just about preparing for war, it's about ensuring social stability. The same logic applies to other resources. China's dependence on foreign oil makes it vulnerable to price volatility and supply disruptions. By building up its strategic petroleum reserves, China is creating a buffer against these risks. This is about mitigating economic vulnerability and safeguarding China's continued growth.
Section 5. Behind the veil. The challenge of assessing China's stockpiles. One of the most challenging aspects of analyzing China's stockpiling is the lack of transparency. The Chinese government does not publish detailed figures on its reserves. Much of the data is considered a state secret. This makes it difficult to gauge the true extent of China's stockpiles and their potential impact on global markets.
Analysts and intelligence agencies rely on a patchwork of information. Satellite imagery can track the construction of new storage facilities and the movement of ships carrying commodities. Trade data can provide clues about the volume of imports. And occasionally, Chinese officials will make public statements about the country's reserves. But even with these tools, it is difficult to get a complete picture.
China is adept at masking its activities. It uses a network of shell companies and intermediaries to purchase goods on the open market. It also engages in barter arrangements and other forms of off-market transactions. This makes it even harder to track the movement of resources into China.
The lack of transparency fuels speculation and mistrust. It also makes it difficult to engage in meaningful dialogue with China about its intentions. Without a clear understanding of the scale and purpose of China's stockpiling, it is impossible to assess the risks or to develop appropriate policy responses.